So yeah, so the one that I was working on is System Center Operations Manager, and that's something that's used for monitoring. So you can use that to monitor your environment, and that does a whole lot of range of monitoring. You can use it for fault monitoring, for performance monitoring, for security monitoring, for configuration monitoring, for accounting monitoring, which just means you're logging, whatever. So you can use it for a whole range of monitoring, but that's just like a Microsoft Data Center monitoring product. And you have things like Orchestrator that you can use for data center automation. So you can use that for uh, automating various processes within your data center. Or you get something like the Hyper-V, the System Center Virtual Machine Manager, which you can use to manage your virtualization infrastructure. So you get all that included in System Center suite of products. But the one that we're focused on in this particular studies is the System Center Configuration Manager. And usually what you get in your environment, let me see, I think I'll send the link again. Let me send the link again to Abdul. I think he's struggling to get the link. Sorry about that. So let me just quickly get the link of the join the Hangout. Um, that's the thing is that let's go. Let me send him the page. There you go. Okay. Okay. So what we typically have in our environment is we've mentioned this multiple times where you have your clients in your environment. Normally you have your client connected to a switch, and then usually you have some sort of, so it could be more than one server, but let's just say we have one server for configuration manager in the environment. So you have your client devices or your servers connecting to switches, and your server at some point is connecting to your local area network via a switch also. So what happens is, to be able to manage this client, you need to, yeah, welcome back, Abdul. Yeah.
Yeah,
No
that's
problem.
great.
Yeah, no problem. So to be able to manage this client, we need to install some sort of client on them. So it's an application that you install on these machines that the applications will be communicating with the server. So this is your config manager server here. Um, I'm really excited now because I just saw one of our old timers join, Enrique. How you doing, Enrique? Ah, nice. Nice to have you around, man. So, Enrique, I remember doing when you first started the whole community, we used to do a lot of hangouts very early UK morning, like 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. or something crazy like that. Good to see you again, man. Yeah. So usually you have your client here installed on this machine, and then the client are basically just taking orders from your config manager server. So the orders could be install this application. The order could be, can you do a scan and report the software that's installed on you, report them back to me. Can you do a scan of the hardware that you currently have and send them back to me? So I can set things like compliance settings and say, can you do a scan, report to me if you're compliant with this configuration. So the configuration could be a lot of things. You could be setting compliance settings for things like registry keys and say, I want to find out how many machines in my environment are compliant with this particular configuration. How many machines in my environment have this particular registry key set to this, which without a product like Configuration Manager is really impossible to do, or it's really, really difficult to do if you have a big environment. So the thing that we already discussed all these in all our previous Hangout with Configuration Manager, so you can check the previous Hangout if you've missed all this. So, but the one that we're going to be discussing today are what I call like the weird situations with Config Manager, because I've done the whole Microsoft training for Configuration Manager. I did 3 of them. Did um, the one for designing, planning and designing, did the one for administering, did the one for System Center and Intune. So within all this training, the things that we're going to be discussing today, they never touched all this part, or they just touched them briefly in theory. while we're doing the training. So, and that's like in situations like this. So now all these we've been talking about all these, but all these are talking about things that are within your domain, things that are within a single domain. But what happens in a situation where there's an acquisition in your company? You know, there's a new company that'll be that maybe your management just bought, and they want to integrate that into your existing configuration manager. How do you get the client, you know? So you want to be able to manage this one. So maybe in your environment you have something like the enterprise agreement already, and you want to bring this new company into your enterprise agreement, so you don't have to be paying double licensing fees. So how do you get these machines that are in a separate domain? Yeah. So let's call this abc.com, and let's call this xyz.com. So how do you get these machines that are on xyz.com and install this client on them so you can bring them into your configuration manager environment? So you have to be able to install the client on them. So how do you do that? So that's not something that they taught us or mentioned. They didn't even mention it, I think, in the training. So I want to integrate this one into my configuration environment so that I can start managing them also. I can start doing software deployment, application deployment, compliance management, inventory, and all those good stuff. How do I do that? Or another situation would be in your environment, users are beginning to maybe marketing or graphics design, whatever department, they're beginning to get these strange devices uh, called Macs. So users in your environment are beginning to get these machines called Macs into your environment, and you know they keep getting more and more and more of them. But then you're deploying this machine in your environment without any configuration manager. There's no way for you to manage what software is installed on it, what hardware is installed on it. If your security team comes up to you and says, "Hey, we're concerned that there may be a vulnerability out there that's going to start attacking our machines. We want this software quickly deployed to every machine in our environment, and we want it done within the next 3 days." There's no way for you to do that, except guys have to go manually to these guys and apply that. But what if you have 250 of these? So how do I bring all these strange devices like Macs and Linux into my configuration manager environment? So those are the weird things that we'll be discussing today. How do we do this? So where do we start from? Let's start from with the Mac. um okay, yeah, here's another scenario that I forgot to mention that we're going to talk about. Or let's say you also have clients in your environment that are probably remote users, like maybe sales users that hardly come into the office. So let's do this. So this is out on the internet, but these are remote users that hardly come into the office. So maybe they're even using their own devices, not joined to the domain, sort of like a BYOD scenario, not joined to the domain. They're using their own devices, but they are accessing your data, they are accessing your information. And if people are accessing your data and your information, you want to at least have some level of control in terms of configuration, which is what configuration manager stands for, by the way, configuration manager. you know, so you want to have some level of control to be able to manage the configuration on this client, or to be able to manage some of the configuration on this client. But they are out here in the internet, these ones that are on your domain. All you need to do is you have Active Directory here. All these machines are already joined to Active Directory. So all you have to do is tell your config manager server, "Hey, config manager server, go talk to Active Directory, get information about all this computer." Configuration manager gets all those information about the computers that are joined to your domain, puts it in his database. Then because now you have information about those devices, now they are known clients. You know about them because you got their information from Active Directory. Now you can say, because I know about you, I'm going to push the configuration manager client to you and install this client on you. So now you can do that in this kind of scenario. So because you already know about them. So, but these ones that are out here, they are not known clients, they are unknown clients. but they are out there on the internet. How do you also bring these guys into your configuration manager environment? So these are weird stuff, but they're interesting stuff because you may be like, yeah, our environment is kind of small, but it's good to still know how do you do this kind of things. Who knows? It may come up one day, and it's a good thing if you already know ahead of time what the answer is. You come up one day, your manager calls you and is like, Tayo, um, we are getting this data center, this private data center out in Coventry, but it's got its own separate domain. We don't want to integrate it with our internal domain, but we want to be able to manage them. Can you do that? What would the answer be? Would the answer be, well, I'm not sure. Let me go find out. So let's find out now how we bring all these different scenarios, all these different situations into our configuration. Taiwo says no. that's that's probably a good one. Yeah. So how do we bring all these different situations, all the different scenarios, and bring them into our configuration manager infrastructure? So let's start with the more easier one. These ones, we have a max inside our domain, and we want to install a configuration manager client on them. What process do we need to follow? So we'll just keep this like as straightforward as possible. What process are we going to follow? And let us demonstrate that process one by one. So who wants to go first? Your manager has called you. So let's give this a title. Integrating Max into your configuration manager infrastructure. So your manager has called you and said, hey, I want you to integrate these Macs that are on our domain already. The Mac devices can be joined to your Active Directory domain. So they're on your domain already. How do we integrate this into our config manager infrastructure? So Abdul, you want to go for that first? What are the things? What are the steps? What's the process that you follow?
I think the first step, you need to have a PKI certificate.
Excellent, 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 excellent. Can I give you like 15 points for that? 15 points over 15. You wish the points could be translated to money, right? So certificates. So let's just say A. Get the certificate ready for the integration. Excellent. And that's a really good point. So, which certificate will you be concerned about? What certificates are you referring to? And also why? Because because we must also know why these are actually needed. So yeah, you want to so what certificates and why do we actually need to be concerned about certificates? Hmm? Who wants to go for that? Taiwo, you want to go for that?
Um, well, I know for certificate it should be security reasons.
Yep, excellent. So let's put this one. Let's say why. Security reasons. But why? Again, so why for security reasons? Now again, let's go back to this scenario again. So you have your internal Windows device, right? And your SCCM server. Your internal Windows device that you've installed the client on, this guy can receive instructions. This guy can receive instructions from your config manager server. It doesn't need any certificates, you know. It doesn't actually need it doesn't need any certificate for you to be able to manage this device with your config manager infrastructure. But now we're talking about Macs. The first thing that came up is the word certificate. What's the reason for that?
Well, could that be because they are not joined to the domain or they are not part of Active Directory?
So they will be joined to the domain, or we'll join them to the domain. As a matter of fact, let's actually just go ahead and join a MAC to the domain. So I already got a MAC device prepared there, the virtual machine, which we'll be using. So I got this MAC device, and let's log into it. You can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's log into this MAC device, and let me close this. I don't need to close that. Let's go on the not start button, but the little Apple button. Let's go on the system preferences, and I want to join this MAC to the domain. So normally, if I go on the sharing here, I can see the name of the MAC, LB Mavericks 3. So what I can do is I can go to my Active Directory server, which is right here. So let's bring this one up to the screen. So let's minimize the SCCM infrastructure. Let's bring up the domain controller. I can go to my domain controller here. I think I need to, yep, let me close this, and then so that we have the full screen. So let's just join the MAC to the domain. So we make sure that let's log into this. Yep, we logged into this. So yeah, so we can, and then what we can do is, if this guy responds quickly, there we go. Okay, so what I can do is I can go under computers here and just go create a new computer account. I'm not sure if I really need this anyway, but let me just do this anyway. So let me call it LB Mavericks 3, and click OK to them. So I have this computer object here. So let me go back to the Mac, and the way you do that is you go on the where is where's that one? Yeah, users and groups. So you go on the users and groups. You go on the login options here. So I need to click this button to unlock that. So let's do that first of all. Yep. So you see network access account server here. So I can go join. So this is how you join the MAC to the domain. And then I can specify so you can enter the address of an open directory server or active directory domain. So the thing you just need to make sure is to make sure that your machines are configured correctly with the correct IPA information. Sorry, it's called ifconfig on them. Is it not? Yeah, ifconfig, and just make sure that I have the right information on this. So let me make sure I can ping my ping 192.168.2.140.2. Yeah, so I can ping my domain controller. If I do a name lookup so my internal domain is internal.lightbulbit.co.uk. Yeah, and I can get replies that shows these are my domain controllers, which is 192.168.140.2, 192.168.140.8. So that means DHCP and network is working correctly. So what I can do in this case is I can just go here and go internal.lightbulbit.co.uk, and then it's instantly trying to resolve that. And let's see what happens. Yep, and then here we go. What's the account that I want to use to join this MAC to the domain? So I can go the administrator account, which is, so that's the computer name, LB Mavericks 3. So actually, I don't even need to create it. I can just go ahead and join it from here without creating an account before. So I don't need to create the account before. So I can go administrator and enter my administrator password and go OK. And then if that, so we'll get information whether that's successful or not. Joining the domain, updating search path. And there we go. My computer is joined to the domain. So this MAC device is now part of that domain. And what I can do is I can, like we saw before, because I can actually go on my Active Directory server, and what I can do is say, let's go back to my Active Directory server. What I can do is under this machine now, if I go refresh. Now, under this machine, I should have information about the operating system come up very soon. So that should come up very soon. So it may take a while. So let's refresh this one. Be Mavericks operating system. Yeah, so eventually it will come up, and then you see the information about the operating system here. And then what I can do actually is I can go under the user account for maybe one of my users. I can go ahead and um, select a home folder for that user. And then whenever the Mac user logs into their account, it will actually mount a folder as their home folder. So I can go ahead and do that. I can say, hey, connect, map a home folder for the user. And then whenever the user connects, you actually map that on the Mac user's device. So that's how we join the Mac. But now this Mac, back to our discussion. So this Mac is joined to our domain now. It's joined to our internal domain. The same domain that Active Directory computers are joined to. So why do we need to be concerned about certificates on there? Any other thought of why we need to be concerned about certificates when we're talking about the Macs? Okay, let's quickly answer that so as not to take. So with config manager, there's always two scenarios whenever you're talking about clients with config manager. There's something called intranet based client, and there's something called internet-based client, which is also the same situation that we'll be looking at when we're talking about these guys. Because remember, we're still talking about these guys internally, right? The Macs are internal, whereas these guys are out on the internet here. So there's a concept of internet and intranet-based client. So the thing with config manager is that internet-based client are only Windows devices, can only be Windows devices. Now you can have Windows internet-based client. It's possible to have Windows internet-based client, but all your Mac devices, either they are internal or external, they are treated by Configuration Manager as internet-based clients. Even though they are within your domain, they are joined to your domain, Configuration Manager treats them differently than the way it treats a Windows device. It treats the Macs as internet-based client. And one of the main differences between intranet and internet-based client is that intranet-based client, no need for secure communications, but for internet-based client, so all Macs, so it doesn't matter whether they are internal or external. If you're reading Microsoft documentation and they say, if you want to support internet-based clients, these are the configurations you need to do. All those configurations, if you want to support internal Macs, you have to make all those configurations for them because they are treated as internet-based clients. So for that reason, communications with the config manager infrastructure, it's required for it to be secure. So Taiwo, you're right in your answer. It's for security reasons. But let's go ahead like, okay, so what are the certificates that we need now? So we know it's for security reasons because again, if you're going to be having a machine out there on the internet that will be communicating with your config manager server internal here, and you'll be able to manage it from here, you don't want this communication here to be not secure, right? Because this is like internet, right? So an ISP guy that your traffic is going through their router can put a packet capture and start capturing the traffic and start reading whatever communications is going through these two guys. Yeah, and that could be really a security issue, especially considering if you're using something like software inventory that's collecting files from this machine. So it's actually transferring certain files. So and the configuration of the files it transfers depends on you. So, but that's one of the things to know. But again, let's just move forward here. So, what certificates do we need for this integration? What are the things that we need? Bob or Dio or Emmanuel? Who wants to go for that? So, Bob, you go for that. So we understand we need certificates now to integrate Macs. What certificates do we need for which system?
Well, you need the one from. Well, I don't know. I guess from the domain controller, but
No, no,
I don't.
yeah, no. I still appreciate that you tried. It's like it's kind of like the same thing. So never be ashamed of your answer in IT. That's one of the reasons why I always appreciate Taiwo's involvement. It doesn't matter. Just try to explain it in your own terms. Even if you have no knowledge, just try to explain it from what you already know. It could be right. So that's all right. So yeah, it's not exactly like the Active Directory one, but who else wants to go for that? Abdul, do you want to give that a go? So now we know we need certificates. What certificates do we need?
I think Microsoft Enterprise certificate.
Microsoft Enterprise certificates for what? So we'll
For,
break this down to make it much more simpler.
hmm.
For what? Microsoft Enterprise certificate for what? So the certificate, so the where you get certificate from doesn't matter as long as the certificate are trusted by all the systems that are communicating, right? So that's what matters whenever you're talking about certificate. So let's break this down just because we're talking about the Mac ones now. So again, we have a configuration manager server here. We have a switch here, and we have a Mac computers here. So these are two Mac computers that we'll be managing with config manager connected to the switch. Config manager server is connected to the switch, say Mac 1, and we'll call this Mac 2, Mac 2. And we have config manager 1. Okay, so we have config manager here on, and this one is just a switch. So which one of these systems needs certificate? So it doesn't matter where we get the certificate from. We can go get it from a third party on the internet. We can get it from our internal Microsoft one. It's probably cheaper if you use your internal Microsoft one. But what certificates do we need for this? For which machines need certificates and why?
Um,
Yeah, carry on, Taiwo.
since they're internet-based clients,
Yeah,
you mean like web server certificates?
excellent. So that's one. That's one of them. So web server certificate. So yeah, so that's right. That's actually one of them. Web server certificate. So let's put that down here. For what? Web server certificate for which system? Which of the systems here?
That would be for SCCM.
For SCCM. Excellent. That's a 10 point for you, Taiwo. So that's for SCCM server. We need a web server certificate. But here's the thing. Whenever we're talking about SCCM server, remember when we talked about roles and site system roles and all that, right?
Yeah.
Abdul, do you want to remind us of what the site system roles are? Some of the ones that you know. What site system roles do we have in config manager? Because SCCM is just not one role. There's lots of roles.
Yes, site server. We have management
Excellent.
point, distribution point,
Excellent.
and fallback status role,
Excellent. What else?
and I think there is some enrollment, web enrollment or
Excellent.
something.
That's an excellent one because that is really relevant. Enrollment point.
Yeah, enrollment point.
Which other one? Enrollment proxy point, right? So actually that's enough for now because that's all we need for this situation. So the way we deal with like the site system roles is again if we go back here and we go to our config manager server, what we can do is if we go under administration and we go under sites and systems, so you can see on this system here we actually have like multiple site system roles. So it's doing distribution point, management point, site server, site database server, and we can add more roles if we want. It's simple. We just go add site system roles, which we'll do, and go and next, and then next, and then we can select which row we want to add. There's lots of rows to add, so we can go ahead and select which rows we want to add here. So here's the thing for config manager. So Taiwo, you're right, web server certificate. Whenever you're talking about configuration manager and integrating Macs into them, these are the rows that are important. This one, not important. This one, it's important, but its important is like below here, because this guy is always talking to site server. Management point is always reporting back to the site server. So that's like the importance of that, but not too important like in the whole enrollment process. But you see these 4 rows here, they are the main ones that are important. So these are the 4 rows that are important. And this row, like what Taiwo said, the web server, you have to have, the management point, you have to have a web server certificate for it. Distribution point, you have to have a web server certificate installed on it. Enrollment point, you have to have a certificate installed for it, which certificate do you think we need for enrollment point?
Can be client.
So this
It's
one,
a client certificate.
it won't be client certificate. It will just be a normal server certificate. That's all we need. Yeah, so we just need a normal server certificate or just normal computer certificate. So it won't be client, it will be server, and we'll show that just normal computer certificate. Enrollment proxy point, you just need a computer certificate for it also. So you need this from the server side. You need to have the certificate issued and installed for all these different roles, and we'll show how to do that. And then for the client, because the client also needs a certificate, right? Because this client also needs a certificate, and this is where, so for the client certificate, we need the workstation certificate, or we need something called the authenticated session, and we'll quickly show that. Let's just quickly show so that we can relate to what's going on. So what I'll do is just quickly run through like what the whole process looks like. So going back on this server now, if I go back to my domain controller where I have the certificate services already installed. So what you typically do is you have certificate services already installed, you open certification authority. I can right click certificate templates here and go under manage, and I can see all the available templates. So here's the web server. So if I sort it by name, here's the web server certificate here. Here's the workstation authentication certificate here. And you can see the purposes here. So purposes for client authentication. This one can do client authentication. Web server is mainly for server authentication. So if I double click on that, it can do server authentication, not only client authentication. So yeah, so what I need to do is I can go copy the web server certificate and go duplicate, copy the web server certificate template and duplicate it, which I've already done in this case. So I duplicated it and I created this one called config manager web server certificate. And what I've now done with this particular template is say any under security, say any computer or user that's in this group called SCCM site servers can enroll this certificate. So that's all I do. So I create a group, put my SCCM servers in them, go under certificate template, duplicate web server certificate, and duplicate it, give the group that I've created, give them permission to enroll that certificate template, and then click OK. So then the next thing I need to do is to start issuing certificate based on that template. And to do that, I need to go under certificate template here, go under new certificate template to issue. And now I can select, the config manager web server certificate and go OK. And then I can start issuing certificate based on that template. And what that template is simply doing is server authentication. So what I can now do is I can go back under my server here, under my SCCM server here, go under the MMC console, go under the certificate store, go under request new certificate, and because this computer is a member of the SCCM site servers group, which can enroll, I can go and say config manager web server certificate, I want you to enroll the certificate. So it will ask for more information, and usually the information that you need is You need information about you can put the DNS name and just enter, SCCM1, the fully qualified domain name, dot whatever, and add that. So here you can change this to the common name, anything, put in the fully qualified domain name here and just enroll that certificate, which is the one that I've already, so this one has already been enrolled on this server. So let's see. You already enrolled already. Configuration manager web server certificate. Okay, maybe not. I've not enrolled it already. Okay, good one. So let's enroll it. So I've not enrolled it already because you can see the friendly name here. I don't have that here. So I'll need to enroll that. Yep, I'll need to enroll it. So let's go ahead and enroll that. So web server certificate, select that and fill in this information. So I'll go common name lb scm1.internal.lightbulbit.co.uk and go ahead and add that. So I'll do the same here. I'll just select an alternative name. So this one is a different one. So for example now, yeah, this is not the one for certificate, but what this one just means I can have multiple names for this certificate. So I can go add multiple names and add them for the certificate. So, but then the other thing is not every operating system can read the alternative name field, but that's something else. But just for now, just to go through the procedure of what to do, it'll be SCCM2, sorry, so that it's not one anymore. Dot internal dot lightbulbit.co.uk. Add that. I need to change this one. LB SCCM2 bulbit.co.uk and then add that. And then I click OK to that. And then I go ahead and enroll that. And succeeded. And here we go. Here we go. This is this one. So this is the certificate here. So it's for server authentication. It's been issued to this server here. So that's how you enroll the certificate. So again, you just create a group in Active Directory, give it the name. So actually, Microsoft has a really good documentation for this. So if you go and search for configuration manager certificate, Microsoft has a really good one. So this one, PKI certificate requirement, that actually goes, yeah, this one, step by step on how to do everything that we just mentioned now. So it goes step by step and tells you which one. So for example, web server certificate for sites that run IIS, and it tells you exactly how to do that. So you can just follow the instructions, just follow it step by step. And I recommend doing this. So you create a group, call it whatever name you want. It goes through everything one by one. So I'll post that in the chat window. No problems, Taiwo. No problems. Yeah. So that's the one to use. Okay. So that's the way to register for the web server certificate. So now we have the web server certificate. We have to configure IIS to use that certificate. So the way to do that again is we open IIS on our config manager server. In this case, we just go I can go on the default website. In this case, it has many virtual directories under it, but I just need to be concerned with this one. Go under bindings, and under the HTTPS, I can edit it and say, this is the certificate I want you to use. So I can view the certificate. So I can make sure that the certificate, the purpose it has a purpose of server authentication. So let's go down, yep, and then the enhanced key uses server authentication. Click OK and select that, and then close that. So now this config manager infrastructure can start using that certificate. So that's how that one is done. So any question regarding that at all? Does anyone have any question regarding that? Abdul, any questions? Any questions at all? None? Is that clear at
Yeah.
all? Yeah.
Yeah, it's clear, but for certificate, this subject especially, I need to read more about it.
Yeah. I
Uh, yeah,
I understand.
yeah,
I understand.
yeah. So
Taiwo told me already also about certificate. So I think
yeah,
I started releasing like some videos, but they're more like how-to videos. But we'll probably need to do some hangout on explaining like the theory of certificate rather than just how-to videos. Yeah. So yeah. So we'll probably
yeah.
do that.
I
Carry.
think I saw some videos, previous your videos. You were talking about the certificate,
Yeah. So
but I
the
didn't, have logos on it.
Yeah, so actually those videos, because they are not like explanations, they are more like
Hmm.
how to do something. So
Ah,
yeah,
okay.
for example, what we're doing now is we're trying to discuss more of like what's going on behind the scene, not just explanation of this is how you do it. So those other
With
videos
some
have,
hangouts, how.
yeah, exactly. So where people can
Yeah,
ask questions about, so how does this work? How does the other one work? So which is more what we're doing. So we probably have to have hangout sessions on certificate. I think it will be really useful to people. And I
yeah.
think we already do actually have some form of former hangout, one of the MCSE classes where we discuss certificates. So I think that would be a good one because again, it's like it's really like, actually let's just like give just a short basic primer of like the whole certificate concept. Because the whole certificate concept is because when you're talking about certificate, you're talking about cryptography, right? And that's like some of the big words that we use in IT. We talk about cryptography. What does cryptography mean? If,
Encryption.
yeah, so it's not only encryption. Encryption is part of cryptography, but it's way much more than encryption. So cryptography, and is at its very basic form, what it means is this: you take a plain text, right? Apply an algorithm, which simply means a calculation. So just to make it simple, because as IT professionals, we can use really complex words that confuse us, right? So I can come to Abdul and just say cryptography, and Abdul is like, I'm confused. What do you mean? What are you referring to? I can throw words like algorithm around. Algorithm simply means a calculation. Yeah, just simply means a complex calculation. That's all it means. So calculation. Cryptography is taking the plain text, you apply an algorithm or a calculation to it, and then it generates something called a ciphertext or a text that is non-readable. So it just simply means, hey, I've got this plain text here. I'm going to run it through this calculation that will mangle everything up. And at the end of this, I have a ciphertext. So that's what it's doing. Sorry, plain text. This one is plain. This one is the algorithm you're using. And this is the ciphertext that you get at the end. Now, there are different parts of cryptography. So there's some sort of calculation that once you apply to this one and you get a ciphertext, you can apply the algorithm again and get the plain text again, right? So that's the one that Abdul is talking about. So that's referring to something called encryption. Well, actually, hashing is also encryption, but there's different types of encryption. So that's like you're encrypting and decrypting. So encryption, decryption. And you can also apply some form of algorithm that cannot be reversed. So that you probably hear people refer to hashing, right? So you can have an hash. You cannot dehash, right? Hashing is a one-way process. Encryption, decryption is a two-way process, right? So you have a plain text, apply an algorithm, get ciphertext, apply, the same algorithm, get a plain text again, whatever, encryption, decryption, but then there's hashing where it's only one way, you cannot dehash. So once you hash something, you can dehash it. But here's the point is that within this, you have this algorithm, it works in different ways. There's something called symmetric or asymmetric. And symmetric simply means this algorithm that you're applying to this guy, it's just one key. And what that means is you take this plain text, you apply this algorithm with a key, you get your ciphertext. When it gets to the other hand, the other guy at the other end can apply the same algorithm with the same key, and they'll be able to get the plain text. That just uses a single key. But then there's this other one, asymmetric, which uses two keys. And you've probably heard of private public key pair. And what that means is you use one of these two keys to encrypt, only the other key can decrypt. So it's like really simple. So again, here, this guy has a private key and he has a public key, right? So it makes this public key available to everyone so that this guy at the other hand also has access to the public key. Yeah. But this private key, it doesn't give it to anyone, it keeps it secret. So whatever I want to send, if I encrypt it with this private key, only somebody that has this public key can decrypt it. And the good thing about that is, about this whole process, is that there's no way to get any relationship between the private and public key. So even though I've made this key available to this guy here, there's no way he can calculate my private key from this public key. There's absolutely no way for him to be able to calculate that. So what's the whole point? What does this have to do with like our whole certificate analogy, or what we're talking about? Is that the whole PKI certificate, the whole PKI certificate world is just a way of, it does more than that, but one of the things it does is it's just a way of generating public and private keys and issuing them to systems. Like, let's go back to this one that we did here. You know, where I went and requested the certificate, right? This certificate, right? If I double click on this certificate, look at this. It says you have a private key that corresponds to this certificate. Well, where did I get the private key from? The private key was given to me by the certification authority that issued this certificate. Now I have this private key. It is stored on this computer within a certificate. So the certificate that the guy is giving to me contains a private key and a public key. And it says, hey, I have the private key. But then the certificate that I will be giving to people that want to communicate with me will only have my public key, which I can find here. So you can see my public key is right here. So if I go on that trusted root here, you can see that I have the certificate here. But this certificate, I don't have the private key for them, but I have their public key right here. So if I want to send information to this guy securely, if I encrypt it with this, nobody else in this world can read that information except the person that has the key pair of this, which is the private key. And that is only owned by this system that issued this. And if the other guy encrypts a message with the private key, I can only decrypt it with this public key, which I have in this. So I'm not sure, does that give you like a general overview of what's going on? So what that means is that in back to our explanation, in this situation where these guys want to be communicating, this guy has a certificate, he has his own private key, he has a public key. This guy has a certificate, he has his own private key and public key in the certificate. This guy also has a certificate here. So what will happen is this guy will go, I want to communicate with you, but I'll encrypt it with my private key and send it to you. Now you have my public key, you can decrypt it. And then I want to send information to you, I encrypt my private key. Or I have this information I want to send to you, I'll encrypt with, sorry, it's the other way around. I'll encrypt with your public key that I have, and I'll send this to you. Now, nobody else can read this information apart from you because only you have the private key. So this guy also wants to send information to me. He goes, I'll encrypt it with your public key because I have your public key available to me. So I encrypt it with your public key and send it to you. And it can be guaranteed no one else can read it. So that's like part of the thing that's going on within the certificate world when we're talking about certificates. Does that shed like a general light on it, Abdul? Is that a bit clearer?
Yeah, it's a bit
Yeah.
clear.
So that's just like a general overview, but that just makes it like a bit, give some context to what's going on when talking about certificate. So again, we get certificate for the client, we get the certificate for we get the certificate for the management point and distribution point, and then for the enrollment point. So what we need, so one of the first things that we need to do actually is if we go back to our config manager machine, let's quickly carry on with not this one. Let's go back to our config manager server. And let's just quickly finish the configuration here. So now, if you look on this config server, we have the management point, we have the distribution point already. They have the web server certificate already, but it doesn't mean that we start using them inside there. So, but we also still need the enrollment point and enrollment proxy point. And I'll explain the reason why we need that in a few minutes. If I go add site system roles, let me add them then as it's installing. So here's the thing. I have to remember that we said whenever we're talking about the MAC, we have to see the MAC as an internet-based client, right? And any configuration we're doing for an internet-based client, we have to apply to the MAC. So here's one of the configurations, for example. It says specify an FQDN for this site system for use on the internet. So we have to specify an FQDN for internet-based client, internet FQDN. If we don't specify this, even though our Macs are not on the internet, they are inside our network. So in this case, what we can use is just use our same internal FQDN and use it as the internet FQDN. But we have to specify an internet FQDN for us to be able to communicate with the Mac because it's treated as an internet based client. So in this case, I'll just type my internal FQDN, lb SCCM2 internal.lightbulbit.co.uk, and if I go next, then I'll install the enrollment point and enrollment proxy point. So I'll just leave all this as the default. So you can see this is set to use HTTPS, use the computer account, and this set to use HTTPS also because again it's internet-based client, that's to be HTTPS, it's required. So while that's installing, I'll just quickly, okay. So it's installing in the background. If you want to really see like what's going on with the logs, you can always go to under your C drive, program files, config manager, under logs. I think the log for that will be EP, yeah, enrollment proxy point, and yeah, so that'll be this log here. Will show you what's going on with the installation, the EP manager. Yep, and there you go. That's the other one, enrollment service MSI log. So those are the logs to look into that will show you how successful the whole process is. So I can actually just go CM trace and yeah, and just read them if you want to. I can go show me what's going on with the enrollment service MSI, enrollment web MSI also. And I can see the whole process that is going to installation directory and what it's doing. Yeah, and these red ones don't be so this red one doesn't actually mean an error message. You can see it's just applying a permission here. It doesn't actually mean that it's a real error message. So you actually have to read the red lines to be able to know whether they are error messages or not. So this one it's not an error message. It's just because it's got whatever in it. It doesn't mean it's an error message. Yeah. Okay, so why that's doing, let me just quickly explain what the whole enrollment point, enrollment proxy point is. So enrollment point, let's put this one here. Let's call it enrollment point, our enrollment proxy point. So enrollment proxy point will say it's EPP. Enrollment point would say it's EP. So here's why these ones are necessary. Because these MAC devices, most likely for many organizations, the MAC devices don't have your certificate, your client certificate issued to them. Because on your Windows client, if your Windows client are going to be using HTTPS, right? So let's say this is a Windows client. What you can do is, excuse me, configure the configuration manager workstation template, right? Certificate. And then by group policy, configure something called auto enrollment. I have a video on YouTube where I showed how to configure auto enrollment using group policy. And what that means is that whenever this machine comes online, it will automatically enroll the certificate that you can use to communicate with your config manager. But there's no way to use group policies to manage Macs. So that means the certificate that your Mac device will use to communicate with this config manager infrastructure the first time has to be issued another way. So this is one of the reasons why these ones are important. Enrollment proxy point and enrollment point. So whenever your Mac come online, for example, what will happen, which we'll do shortly, is we'll install the client manually on this Mac. And whenever we install it, one of the questions it's going to ask us is, give me the address of this enrollment proxy point. And then we type the address in there, and what it will then do is it will go talk to this enrollment proxy point. The enrollment proxy point will talk to the enrollment point. Yeah. The enrollment point will go to the background. So let's say this is your Active Directory Certification Authority, which is the one that issues your certificate. Yeah. The enrollment point will go talk to this guy and say, hey, give me a certificate that I can give to this guy so that I can go communicate with this guy here. So this is your configuration manager infrastructure. You have your management point, which is where your client communicates with. So every communication or most communications go to the management point. So give me a certificate because this guy is set to use HTTPS now. He won't accept your communication if you don't have a valid certificate. For Windows clients, hey, they get the certificate. You can configure that by group policy. It's advised, um, you do configure that by group policy. This machine comes online, automatically just talks to the CA, gets the certificate. So once it gets the certificate, no problem, talk to the management point, everything's going on smoothly. But this guy cannot use group policy and use auto enrollment. So you need to go through a different process. So he goes to talk to this guy again. This guy goes, yeah, to the enrollment proxy point to the enrollment point. So enrollment proxy point is just a proxy point for the enrollment point. Talks to the enrollment point, and then this one gets the certificate from the CA, and then returns it back to this client, so that now this client can go and communicate with the management point. So that's what these ones are useful for: the enrollment proxy point and the enrollment point. So let's see how that works in real reality. So going back to this one, so I guess this one should be completed by now. Installed successfully without any errors. Don't expect to see any errors. So let's see. Yeah, so this is looking good. So whenever you see, for most error code, whenever you see installation success or error success equals to 0, that means successful. If it's anything other than 0, then there may be cause for concern. So that's looking good. So it looks like this was successful. So we have an enrollment point and enrollment proxy point on the same machine. It doesn't matter. We're just a small environment, lab environment here. So the other thing that we need to do, not the first thing, but the other things that we need to do is, now we have the certificates issued for distribution point, management point. We actually have to configure these site system roles to allow internet-based clients, which means we have to enforce them to use HTTPS, and we have to say, allow intranet and intranet connections. Because again, remember, whatever you have to do for an internet-based client, you have to do for your Mac. So if I select allow intranet and internet-based collections, that for the distribution point, and go OK. So that's good. Let's go do the same thing for the management point. Because if you don't select all these, it will fail. So HTTPS, allow internet and intranet connections. And look at this other option, allow mobile devices and Mac computers to use this management point. So I have to select this option also and go apply that. So now they can use that. And the other thing I need to do is I have to go on the site here. So you're looking at, oh, it's not like, just straightforward, simple, stuff like that. Yeah, it's not. So if I go under hierarchy settings here, so is there anything to configure here? really nothing to configure. Let's just go under properties and make sure that there really isn't anything for us to configure to allow that. Yeah, so I can't really see anything else for us to configure here. So yeah, we can leave this for now. Okay, so we've configured a management point and distribution point to allow HTTPS and to allow MAC communication. So I will just confirm that our enrollment proxy point and enrollment point are configured to use HTTPS also, which they are. So that's good. Yeah, and let's see. Yep, they're configured to use HTTPS. So that's good. Okay, so the other thing, back to our board, is now we have certificate for these guys for the management point, distribution point. We've configured them to allow internet client-based communication. But then we have to, so this whole process, when this guy goes to talk to the CA and say, can you issue me a certificate? That's the last step that we need to configure, which is this one here. Now, because what you can do is you can actually just go to your certificate authority, get a certificate request from the MAC computer, and go directly to your certificate authority, input that certificate request, and issue it directly there. Then manually take that certificate. You get a certificate manually from this guy. Then manually take that certificate to the Mac client and install it. So you can do that, but that's a lot of process, which is why you're using this one that will automate that whole certificate issuing process. So what you can do in this situation is we have to go to a certificate authority and make sure that this process will work smoothly. So make sure that the user because whenever you install the client here, you enter the enrollment proxy point, web server address. This guy is going to ask you and say, give me your username and your password. So whatever username and password you enter here must have the ability to enroll the certificates that will be passed on, otherwise you will fail. And that's your way to have security, because otherwise anyone could just go here and just go ahead and say, give me a certificate, and they'll get a certificate. But in this case, whenever you install the client, point it to this guy. This guy will say, hey, give me a username and password. In the backend, you have to have allowed that user with their username and password to be able to enroll the certificate. So which is the last step that we need to do quickly here. So if we go back to our certificate authority and just see what we'll do. So certificate authority. So I already did that. So what again, just go back on the manage. So the template that we are copying in this case is the one for authenticated session, this one. So we've copied that, and I've copied that to a template. So you can right click on it and just go duplicate template. And I've copied that to this template, configuration manager client certificate. And if I go under properties, under security, you can see I have the security group here. So I've put the security group called Mac users, and I've said anyone in this security group called Mac users can enroll this certificate, which is good. So the other thing I need to do is I need to go back to this computer. Let me create a new user actually. I'll just copy this guy and call this Mac user 2. Mac user 2. Yeah, and then make sure that Mac user 2 is a member of the Mac users group, which can enroll that certificate. So that's good. So now we've created certificate templates that will be used to issue the certificate, and we've made sure that we've limited it by security group who can enroll, so that not just everyone can enroll. So back on configuration manager, I have to go under client settings, and if I edit my default client settings, and the setting we're looking for is the setting here that says enrollment. And what I need to do is I need to say allow users to enroll mobile devices and Mac computers. Yes. And then set a profile. So this is where we'll say this is the certificate template that you use. let's create a new profile. I'll call this config manager Mac profile. It's automatically filled in the code because I have only one primary site anyway. It said issuing certification authorities, which is my internal CA, and I only have one. So I click OK. And it says certificate templates to use. So this is where I select the certificate template that I created earlier, which is configuration manager Mac client certificate. And OK. And now machines can actually start using the old process that we've set up. So that's a lot of stuff to do. You know, that's a lot of stuff. First of all, I have to make sure that SCCM servers, all the roles have the right certificates assigned to them, management point, distribution point. We have to not only do that, we have to configure them and allow them for internet-based client communication, enable HTTPS, tick the button to allow MAC communications, and then we have to go create a certificate template for the client. We copy it on the authenticated session. Then we have to make sure that the security group, we've limited it by security group for more security protection. And then we have to make sure that we configure our client settings to allow MAC enrollment and select the certificate template that we created earlier. So now this whole process is set up. Now the next step is you have to download the Mac client and go to install it here and then enroll it, go through the whole process, which is what we'll do. So before I do that, I have to do something else quickly. Remember when we first showed this one where you actually can go select the network, join this MAC to the domain. So here also we can select the users that can log into this computer. So I think where do we select the users that can log into this computer? So I want to select domain users actually. Okay, allow network users to log in at login window options. So here, yes. So I can select the users that can log into this. If I want, I can use security groups in AD. But in this case, I just want a single user. So let me just go and select a new user called, and you can see now I'm logged into my domain now. I can see the users in my domain. I can see the groups on my domain. It's nice. You got Mac working with Windows. And what it's just using is it's using held up. So I can select the Mac user here, Mac user 2 here, and say Mac user 2 can also log into this computer. Done. And let's lock this. And then I can log out. I'm logging as Mac user 2. If I log out of this machine, hopefully it responds. Yeah, there we go. So other user, Mac user 2. I enter the password for Mac user 2. So this is a domain user logging into the Mac. Let's see if that works. So if a user were to log, here we go, logged into the Mac with a domain user. So if a user were to log into this Mac machine now, and the user is not in the Mac users group that we've said only the users in this group can enroll this certificate, the user won't be able to join this machine. So that's the level of security, you know. So which is good. Any questions so far, Abdul? I know there's a lot of information to take in, right? I know. Any questions at all?
Yes, there is a lot of there are a lot of information in this Hangout. But I have a question. When you change the management point and distribution point,
yeah,
you select allow internet user to connect over HTTPS.
Yes.
I think the intranet machines still they will be able to communicate using HTTP.
And so in this case, so you can set it that way, but in this case, I've limited it to use just HTTPS. So you can. So what you can do is, for example, so there are two places to set that. So if you go on the site,
Yeah.
I think it either on the hierarchy settings or under properties, one of them. I think it's under properties. So let's go under properties. And what you can do is say, because you can enforce it from the site level and say only use HTTPS. Okay, yeah, here we go. Client computer communication under site properties. So I can say only allow HTTPS for my entire site. So anything that's no HTTPS won't be allowed at all. Or I can say HTTPS or HTTP, let me decide per system. Yeah, you get the point, right? So you can enforce it on the site level and say allow only
Yes.
HTTPS, or you can say let me decide per system. So if I want to decide per system, so I can actually have multiple management points, yeah, where I set some to allow HTTP, some to allow HTTP and HTTPS, some to allow just HTTPS. In this case, the configuration I've said is allow just HTTPS. So clients will be able to communicate with this management point using HTTP. They have to have HTTPS. So you can't have it like a mixed mode where you have them doing both HTTP and HTTPS. So a management point, if you decide to use HTTPS, it's only responding HTTPS. So it's either you select HTTP or you select HTTPS. So what I can do is I can now install another site server or another site system, install management point role on it, and say you can do HTTP. But this particular management point, because of the configuration I've done, will only respond to HTTPS, valid HTTPS request. And I have to have this one ticked for the MAC one. Is that clear, Abdul?
That's meaning you need a separate server for a dedicated server for internet user
So
and install the management point, so it
yes,
will not affect the.
yeah. So that's the advised one. But actually, like for example, I know in our own environment, we don't even use HTTP at all because our security guys will scream. So
Uh,
yeah, so it enforced like, and then actually, with Microsoft PKI for Windows computer, it's actually like the easiest one to do, because Windows computers, if you have auto enrollment already configured for your clients, they already have client certificate. You don't need to configure any extra templates. You have auto enrollment configured. That's good because you've done the job for the Windows side. Because whenever any machine is joined to your domain, it's guaranteed they will get a certificate that they can use to communicate with any system within your domain. So that's like the easy part for we. So the difficult part is when you're bringing systems like Mac systems, Linux systems. For Windows, group policy will take care of all these ones for you. Like the whole reason why we are needing things like enrollment point and all these ones is because there's no group policy that we can use with the Mac. It's just the whole reason for all this whole hierarchy is to get this certificate, which this Windows guy we just get by group policy. So that's the whole point. Is that clear? Is that clear? Or did you have another question?
yeah, it's clear. But I have a question here
Yeah, have you?
for what kind of information we are using HTTP to transfer?
So
I mean the management, the setting, client setting, and these things, software packages.
so if you're communicating with actually most communication in Config Manager 2012 happen over HTTP or HTTPS. So you're
Hmm.
right, communication with the management point. So you're getting a client policy from the management point. You're reporting back to the management point in terms of transferring information. So you do a software inventory, you transfer the result of that software inventory to the management point. Those all go over HTTP or HTTPS. So if you look at the communications, like if you look at the things that Microsoft mentioned when it talks about configuration manager, client, um, configuration manager, client communications. So if you look at the one that is communicating with the management point, you see the main thing for management point is HTTP HTTPS, which means let's see. Let's just do a quick search for management. Client, this one is talking about communications. Yeah, just talking about the concept of internet-based client that we mentioned. Where is that again? Communications initiated by the client, management point, the client. But there's a particular one. Okay, yeah. So you see, let me expand this to make it bigger. So can you see the screen at all? Should I make it bigger?
No, it's perfect.
It's good. Okay. So just before a client can communicate with a site system role, the client uses service location to find the site system role that support the client's protocol, HTTP or HTTPS. So by default, clients use the most secure method available to them. So to use HTTPS, so actually like the client communication with most site system roles is by HTTP or HTTPS. So you can see the following site system roles support HTTPS communication from client, management point, software update point. So when it's getting software update, it's actually downloading all those stuff by using HTTP, HTTPS. Even from your distribution point, it's actually downloading files from your distribution point. It's not using sieves. So it's not using sieves or SMB to download the source files to install the application. It's using HTTP, HTTPS. And that is good because you don't need to open any extra port, right? Because many people already have HTTP, HTTPS open on their environment already. So you don't need to
Yes.
open any extra port. So yeah, so majority of the communication in SCCM 2012, that they made a lot of changes in communication between in 2007 2012. And one of the major changes is that majority of the communications goes over HTTP, HTTPS. Yeah, so you're right in terms of like whether it's getting policy, reporting data back to the management point. It could just be things like sending DDLs, just data discovery records. So yeah, okay. So what we need to do next is we need to download the configuration manager client for the Mac. So let's search for that configuration manager Mac client. So we need to download that and install that. So unfortunately, on our SCCM server, normally we can get the client from the server already, right? But it's not the same with the Mac. You have to actually go download it from the internet. So it doesn't come from within, so you won't find it on the configuration manager server already. So you have to manually download it. So if I go, yeah, here we go. Microsoft System Center 2012, I have to configuration manager client. So I have to go here. So I can add, so all the additional clients. So the only one that comes pre-packaged on the server is one for Windows. So if you want the one for Linux, HP, Unix, and all those ones, you have to come download them manually here. So I'll just click download here and download just the one for the Mac. And this downloads. And then what I'll just do, so you see this is an MSI file, right? So if I go, so actually I can just go ahead and click to install it here. So what you just do is you just extract it and then I can copy it. So I can go agree, next. So that's the folder that it's going to extract it to. So let me copy that folder and get ready and go next, next, and it's going to just extract the content of that MSI file on your machine or to your machine. So then I will just wait for this to finish. Let's go to that location also. It's not created it yet. We'll create it. Except it's waiting for me to log in with, sorry, to run this as an admin. Hopefully it will throw an error message or complete shortly. Okay, so back to the old diagram stuff. So look at all the things that we have to do to bring the Macs. So actually, to make this a bit more easier, let me bring in my own. So on my own machine, I have MediaWiki installed. So I use this for my own internal documentation. So if I do any process I do, on my internal wiki, I can search for different stuff that I've done in the past. So anything that I've done, I just usually just document them on my internal wiki. So that way I can always refer back to them in the future, like if I've, whatever it is that I've done. So back to the one for the Mac. So I've just listed everything like in a really, really easy way, and I think I'll probably post this on my blog somehow. So it's just a simple process of what to follow. So number one, install all the site system roles needed for integration. So these are the site system roles. Make sure you have management point, distribution point, enrollment proxy point installed. Number two, prepare your certificates for this integration. So we start with the one that will be used by the Mac client computer. So create a security group, duplicate the authentication section, session certificate template, set that group to be able to enroll that certificate, and now you're ready to start issuing. So then you create and issue a Windows device certificate template on the CA. So this is the one, like if you have only one management point and you're configuring it for HTTPS, your Windows device also needs to be HTTPS. So I've just quickly added this one. For management point and distribution point, you need web server certificate, which I already know how to do. So there's no point in writing all the process for that. So get all that ready. Then the other thing after that is to configure the configuration manager site and site system roles to prepare for the integration. So for management point, what we did, make sure you enter the internet FQDN name. So all these one are things that I also got by trial and error. I tried it. When I tried it, I missed this one the first time because I enabled I didn't put in an internet FQDN, but even if you're not, even if you don't have an internet facing interface or anything, just put in your internet FQDN. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And then allow mobile devices and Mac computers to use this management point. So for distribution point, enable HTTPS, allow internet and internet connections. Enrollment point, make sure HTTPS is enabled. Proxy point, make sure HTTPS is enabled. Configure the default client settings, which is what we did, where you went and configured the client settings so they can actually get the certificate template. And then, just do all the other stuff of joining the Mac to your domain, download the SCCM client, and then enrolling it, which is what we're trying to do now, if that's completed now. So let's see if that's completed. Okay, it's done. So let's see if we have, there we go. And here's a Mac client DMG file. So what I'll do is I'll copy this. I'll copy this to this server here. So let's minimize this. So I'll copy this to this server here. Go under the C drive. Let me create a new folder, Mac client, and paste this here. So then I'll go connect for my Mac computer to this machine, 192.168.2.103. So let's bring up the Mac computer. And the way you do that is you go, because Mac can also speak SMB, go to folder and go SMB 192.168.2.103/C$. It's going to ask me for my username and password. Oh, it says the folder can't be found. Is it 2.103? Yeah, sure it's 2.103. So let me just make sure that I've still got the right IP address. Terminal and ping 2.168.2.103. Yeah, I can ping it. 192.168. I'm sure I'm making some silly mistake somewhere. Okay, maybe not go to folder. Sorry. I think I need to go connect to server, not go to folder. Yeah, there we go. Sorry, that's why. SMB 192.168.2.103 $, and then connects to it. She asked me for my username and password, and this one is now a domain joined machine. It's just my Hyper-V host. So I'll put in the address, sorry, the credentials, and I should be able to connect to it. Yeah, there we go. So all I need to do is copy the Mac client folder, or open the Mac client folder actually, and just copy this latest client here. Just paste it on the desktop. So it's a really straightforward one. We go paste item. And then install the client. Let's go. There we go. Here's our SCCM setup. So it's a bit from now on it's a bit similar to the one that we did for Windows. Um, so yeah, so you've extracted it. You can use SCCM setup and just run that. So the other thing to note is the other thing to note for the Mac is it has a location where it actually stores like majority of the information. So I have to, because the machine I'm logged in as is not administrator right. Sorry, it doesn't have administrator right. What I can do is bring up the terminal and make sure I run this with an account that has administrator permissions. Okay, so I can go sudo su. So again, like in this kind of situation, is not something that password, the password of an admin account, I think. Sorry. Okay, here we go. So now I'm logged in as an admin account. So what you can probably do in an environment is rather than have your users doing all this stuff, you can just script all this. Just write a Mac bash script that will do all this, and just send that to your users and say, hey, just double click on it. It will do all the process. It will log in as root, the root account on your Mac machines, execute all this process, and all they need to do is enter their username and password. So let's browse to so let's go see the desktop. Yep, so let's go. So actually, I think I'll go, I'll just copy this tree. I don't need to do this, but yeah, paste them to the desktop. Let me list that again. Okay, so I got SCCM set up now. I think I'm running as administrator already. Or if I want, I can. I think I'm running as administrator already. Just see. So SCCM setup. Let's go. Okay. Okay, I think I can probably just go CM client package. Let's just run this one. Let's run it this way. But if you want to make it way much more smoother, you can script it using SCCM setup.exe. Start the wrong password. Okay. That's interesting. Okay. Oh. Let me see if I have another escape. Oh, I need to reset the admin password.
Great.
Yeah, I need to reset the admin password. I must, because I think I usually just build them in. I build these images and just clone them usually. So I think I got the wrong one. So yeah, so we'll restart this machine. So once it comes up, so then we'll see what happens. So because now it's gonna get the certificate and all that. So again, I may need to just reset this one to make it quicker. Has anybody ever tried this before? Have you ever tried this one? Have you ever used this product for this Nivesh guys and stuff before? Have you? Bob and Abdul, have you used this before? So it's a good one to use to test whenever if you want to test anything like for Macs, it's a good one. So
Well, I've
obviously,
used VirtualBox, but I haven't used that other thing.
no, the one for Mac, as in this one for Mac, the Mac images, because normally you can't just run Macs on Windows machines like that. So I think these guys had to make some modifications in how it runs for us to be able to run this on Windows machines. Um, okay, so the other thing though is that I don't want I want to be able to go to what yeah again I can complain because I wanted to be able to go to and log in as Mac user. 'Cause I need to log in as Mac user. Yeah, so it's part of config manager anyway. So now, yeah, you see, so it's installed the client. Now it wants to do the enrollment. So if I just bring up the key store here, where you get all the certificates. So you see actually, if this works, um, yeah, sorry, kitchen. So you see when it actually enrolls the certificate, you see the certificate coming here. So I think on the login, we should see more certificate coming. And then you should see my internal root certificate, authority certificate also show up here once we finish the enrollment. So if I go next, so here we go. So now it's asking me for the username and the password. So the username and password I put in here, it's really important because it must have permissions in the back end to enroll that certificate. So this is your security. And then this one is also important. It's asking you what's the name of the server. So I know what the name of my server is, but let's see. So Mac user 2. I need to put the backslash light bulb backslash Mac user 2. Let me put in the password and server name lp cm2.internal.lightbulbit.co.uk. Go next. It's trusted server. So yeah, because remember this first time I'm communicating with it, said, hey, I don't trust this server. Do you want to continue? Yep. So let's go see if it gets. Yeah, there we go. Enrollment. And can you see that? Can you see the certificate that just came in here? Mac user 2. So it's issued the certificate for the user account, which it can now use to communicate, and it brought in the root certificate authority here. So in the back end, what actually happened is what we described here, where it's going to talk to the enrollment proxy point, authenticated the user with Active Directory in the back end here. So you have your AD server here. It's authenticated. So so this one authenticated the user in the back end with Active Directory. Make sure the username and password are correct. And then not only that, checked that that user is in the right security group to enroll the certificate. And then once it confirmed all that, it returns the certificate. So all that we can do in Windows by just using auto enrollment is what we've just wasted. All these 1, 2, 3, 4 servers has to be involved to get that done for the Mac. And that's enrollment successful. And then if I click OK, so this is the one that we'll be using in our test going forward. Because what we can now do with this is the configuration manager client. If I go under sort of like a control panel for Mac. Under system preferences, there'll be a configuration manager client down here somewhere. Here we go, configuration manager. And there we go, look at that. Communicating with configuration manager environment. And we'll be showing this as we carry on with our studies. You will see how when we deploy applications to Windows, we deploy applications to Mac. We configure configuration compliance items for Windows, we configure compliance items for Mac. So isn't that interesting? I think that's interesting. So now if your manager says, hey, what do I do? Can we bring Macs and do some level of management to them? I don't want to go spend, we have 10 Macs. I don't want to go spend, this big money to go buy new software and all that stuff. Can we do some level of configuration management with configuration manager and Macs? The answer is yes, you can. So you just need to know what the process is. Follow the process, you'll be okay. I'll put links to, so this one that I've written up in my own home wiki, I'll put it on my blog and I'll put the link on the community page because I think it just makes things way much more straightforward. You can just follow this, just follow it step by step and you'll be done to do that. So unfortunately, I think this is where we'll have to stop today because of the time. We've still not covered this one where we have a separate domain to integrate. So the only one we've managed to cover is the Macs. We've not covered the internet-based client or the separate domain, which is an interesting one. The separate domain, I was going to show that using Microsoft Azure. I guess we'll do that next time. So because I have these machines running on Microsoft Azure, that they are in separate domains, and we'll integrate this one with our configuration manager infrastructure. But we'll do that next week. So any questions regarding what we've discussed today? Abdul, Bob, fire away if you have any questions.
I have no question for the today Hangout, but I have a question for last Hangout.
Yeah, sure. Carry on, please.
Yeah, okay. Now, if you change, let's say now I already, install the client on the machine, okay?
Yeah.
By default, there are 3 folders which be created on the client machine.
Yeah.
Which cache and SCCM and CCM.setup.
Yeah.
Or CCM setup folders.
Yes.
Okay. For the cache size, as discussed last week, the default one is 5 gig.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's say that I want to enlarge the size and make it 10 gigs.
Yeah.
Okay. If I change that using the switches, okay, it will affect only the new client installation, the client software installed on the new machine, or I can also change it on the machine which already I installed the SCCM client on.
So if you do that using the installation, that's definitely going to affect only machines that you install from then on. So it won't affect already existing machines. I think there's a way to change that generally on existing machine to modify that. So, but I don't think there's an inbuilt way with config manager.
I think maybe with group policy we can change the size.
Yeah, I think you can probably
for existing one.
Yeah, so I'm sure that there's like a registry key. So inbuilt with config manager itself, I don't think there's a way that you can modify the cache size on existing client. I don't think. I think there's a third-party product that people use to do that. There's a third-party product that I integrate with config manager that people use that had like extra functions. I've forgotten what it's called. Configuration manager. So for existing ones, yeah. So so the ones that when you do that only affects new client that you install. But for existing clients that you've already installed, so there are actually 2 ways. So there are multiple ways that you can achieve that. I think you can still go ahead and because you can reinstall the client on those machines, it really won't affect that much. but you may probably not
Mm.
want to. You may probably not want to do that. So I think, like you said, there may be a registry key that you can probably modify that can get that done. The other one that I'm seeing here is this one that people are saying, hey, you can just use this PowerShell script. So which means you can use this PowerShell script to modify that, but then you have to push it out as a package to the
Ah,
client.
okay.
Yeah, so you just push out a PowerShell script that will execute, and I think this is just modifying the WMI repository for configuration manager client. So it's modifying that, which I guess that is exactly what that third-party product is doing. But I've forgotten what that thought. It used to be really popular. Do you know what that thought? It used to be popular in 2007. The third-party product that people can use, that you can just right-click on it and just go. The thing that we can do in Configuration Manager 2012, where we can go, we want to force clients to check for policies. We can do that in Configuration Manager 2012 now by going client notification, download client policy. But this one doesn't exist in 2007, and people have to install a third-party product to accomplish this one, and also the one to change the size. Let me look for it again. It used to be really popular third-party product. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, so it's called Right Click Tools. It's really popular in 2007. You've heard it before, right? Configuration Manager Right Click Tools.
Right click tool.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't use it at all in 2007.
Yeah, but it was popular in
Yeah.
2007.
Yeah.
So it's less popular so you can see, so you can use it to change client cache size.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is like
Yeah.
one way that people used to. But the thing is, like many things I used to have this one to do, Microsoft they have included it in 2012. So most people won't install this one. So if it were me, I probably won't install right-click tools on my 2012 server. I probably would just go for the option of deploying the PowerShell package. So I think that's the option I'll probably go for. Or the option
You
I'll go
know,
for is I can just wait for the next opportunity whenever there's a config manager update, because that installs the client anyway. For example, they released cumulative update 2 last 2 weeks for SCCM 2012 out to Service Pack 1. They released CU2. So CU2, if you install it, it has to update the client on the machine, so it reinstalls the client.
yeah,
Yeah.
at that time you can't change it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if you have this one enabled in your environment, which there's no reason not to, which will save you a lot, automatic client update. So if I go here and I go under hierarchy settings, so just have this enabled, automatic client upgrade. So whenever you upgrade your config manager infrastructure and then it has to upgrade the client, you don't have to be deploying the package. Config manager will handle all that for you. So once it finishes the upgrade, it should just automatically start upgrading the clients themselves. So you can just wait for the next opportunity when it does automatic client updates whenever you update your server, or you can push out using PowerShell, or if you want, you can download the right click tools and use that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, good one. Any other questions, Taiwo? Any other questions? I'm not sure. Did Taiwo see the demo that we did for the Mac device at all? Did you see it?
No, I missed it. Sorry.
That's it. But let me just quickly, I can probably just quickly show you what the end result looks like.
Oh,
Because I know you have Macs. So if I go the same screen, let me show you again. So you can see my screen now. So just
yeah.
what the end result looks like. So this is the end result. So the end result is you have this configuration manager client installed on your Mac. So you find that on the system preferences. And if I scroll down here, I find the configuration management client here. And then it will keep communicating with the management point. So this is kind of like the way to like like when we go on our control manager, configuration manager applet in control panel on Windows, and we say refresh machine policy now. So this is like the equivalent of that. Connect now. And then so it goes to talk to this guy, gets the new policy. So we'll be using this to demonstrate as we're going forward. Like whenever we're deploying applications to Windows, we'll be doing that for Macs. And then actually, I've not showed you. So this is enrolled now. If we go back to our configuration manager server, and then go under devices. There we go. You can see client installed. Yeah, and then there's a lot of things that we can now do with this, so which we'll be showing later. So that's the end result. So we have the client installed. It's joined to our domain. It's joined to the config manager environment. We don't need to spend a lot of money on a different product to bring that in, and then now we have multiple products to manage.
Can you do the same for Linux also?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So Linux even has more flexibility than Mac. So Linux has more. So the process for Linux machines is actually much easier than the one for Macs. So you can do it for Linux, you can do it for Unix.
Right.
Yeah. So the whole process that happened is the one that we mentioned again, where we set up the enrollment proxy point, the enrollment point here. So the client talks to the enrollment proxy point, which talks to the enrollment point, which authenticates the user in Active Directory, checks if the user has access to get this certificate, which we've defined in the background, checks if the user has access to get that certificate, and then issues the certificate to the client and passes it on to this guy. So which is the thing that we achieved. And then I said I was going to post a blog on this one. So I'll send the link. So the blog is just step-by-step instruction of what to do to achieve this.
Oh.
To bring your
So
Mac.
without screenshots and stuff.
No screenshot. So it gives like we've talked about this one. So screenshots are ancient.
I know.
So it's like really boring. It's like a really boring stuff to be using screenshots. So screenshots are ancient. So I just have text, just pure text. If possible, if we can even make it much easier with just scripts. But just text is enough for the IT guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, is there like a shared because I saw someone asked a question about shared folders. Do you like keep all these
No,
images and documents that you type in a shared folder or something?
no at all. No. So apart
Oh,
from the video recording, after this one, I will just delete everything.
oh,
Yeah.
no, I thought maybe there was like a link somewhere to
I
like
mean,
all the documents.
if people think they will find it useful, I can probably start saving them and uploading them somewhere.
Yeah, I think that would be useful because sometimes I might forget something and I won't have time to go through all the videos.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if I have the image,
Yeah.
if I have the image, I can think, oh yeah, this is what's going on.
Okay.
I
Okay.
thought it's possible.
Okay. I think I'll strongly consider saving them then. No problems. If that would be useful, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. So far
Yeah.
today.
Okay.
Yeah. Carry on, Abdul. Sorry.
One last question.
Yeah.
Now, which site assignment performed or done for Mac client?
Which one do you think it's done? It's Active Directory.
Active Directory, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's Active Directory.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Just thank you.
So again, I think it's also the whole process. It starts from manual, right? So if he doesn't get anything manual, he checks if there's anything by group policy, then checks Active Directory, then he checks if there's anything that whenever you're doing config manager deployment, you've set a fallback site. Yeah, with that, yeah. So because this Mac is joined to our domain, it can actually read information also from Active Directory. So all that information that is read from Active Directory is using held up.
Okay.
Yeah. So the only one that we've covered today is this one with the Macs, internal Macs. I think this one is a really interesting one because this kind of situation may actually show up in like internal environments where you have multiple domains. I'm not sure how many people have multiple domains internally.
Well, we have two, but they're separate. We're trying to get rid of one.
Yeah.
Actually, we have two forests.
Yeah.
And in each forest we have a dedicated SCCM server.
Dedicated one for each one. Well, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But some people will go, that could be extra licensing costs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other forest, has SCCM 2007.
Yeah.
And I think maybe we will move it to the existing one.
Yeah. So if you want
2012.
Yeah. So I think next. So this is a very interesting one because this one, interestingly enough, you see it's a really simple process to achieve with this one. So the one that we'll be using to demonstrate this one is what we'll be using for this remote site is. I think we'll definitely finish this one next week. So I have these two Azure virtual machines that we'll be using. So these two virtual so there's already a site-to-site connection between my internal domain, so to speak, and this external site. So what we'll be doing is these two machines that are on a totally separate domain, we'll bring them into our config manager infrastructure, and we'll go ahead as to achieve automatic client push. And even if we want, we can have management point, and even if we want, we can have a primary site or a secondary site server on this domain. So this one is on a separate domain, this one is on another domain. We can achieve automatic client push where we can just right click the client here and go, hey, push. And then the interesting thing about this is that these two forests don't have to have any trust between them. Isn't that interesting? They don't have to have any trust between them if you just follow the old configuration that Microsoft has laid out. So that's what we'll achieve next week. And we'll just touch briefly on this one for the internet based client. Yeah. Okay, no problems, guys. We have no other questions. Someone want to say something? Is it Taiwo or is he up to?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So if there are no other questions, then we'll carry on next week. We'll continue from there. So have a wonderful, enjoy the rest of the weekend.
Thank you.
No problems. Yeah. Cheers. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah.